When I look at the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them, and the Son of Man that you visited him? I love that verse from Psalm 8 because it speaks of the wonders and the mysteries of creation, and how in that vastness of creation we have a God that cares for us, loves us, and sent his Son for us. The picture that we started with this morning is a very famous picture. I can remember having it on my wall in my halls of residence at university, and it was photographed in 1968. It was a marvellous picture that was just taken on the spur of the moment by Bill Ankers. Bill Ankers was one of the first astronauts to orbit the moon. And as they were orbiting the moon, he took a snap on his camera of the Earth across the barren lunar landscape in orbit. It's a wonderful picture, and it's a very famous picture, and it has been credited with starting the environmental movement here on Earth, because it shows the Earth as this fragile ball hanging in space. To me, it speaks again of the wonders of creation, but for Bill Ankers, it spoke of the opposite. Before taking that journey to orbit the moon in 1968, he had been a devout Roman Catholic. But as he stared at the Earth from orbit of the moon, he suddenly found his faith shaken to its core. And he started to realise that for himself, he suddenly couldn't believe anymore in a God that had created this earth and had made human beings special. Because this planet was just one upon billions of possible planets. In the Milky Way, one of billions and billions of galaxies. And he suddenly realised that as you moved away from the earth, it would gradually become more and more distant, until it was a speck of dust, and then no more. And for Bill Ankers, he just couldn't equate that with his faith. How could we say that human beings were the special creation of God when this planet hung in a limitless and unimaginable galaxy? Bill Ankers never ever discovered his faith again. To me, that's a tragedy. Because when I look at that picture and I see the earth hanging in the sky, then I think of the wonders of creation and the wonders of our God who created the vastness of the universe. Just 1 year after Bill Ankers had orbited the moon, of course, we had the famous moon landing. And the second person to step foot on the moon was Buzz Aldrin. And he had a completely different reaction to Bill Ankers, because as he looked at the picture of the moon from where he stood on the moon's surface, he was struck by the wonder of God and by the wonder of creation. And did you know that there's a moon landing Bible verse? It's the verse I spoke to you at the beginning of this sermon, Psalm 8. Because for Buzz Aldrin, in the vastness of creation, in the vastness of space, he saw the loving hand of God and was struck by the majesty and the glory of a God who can also love us personally in that vastness. In fact, Buzz Aldrin, again, like Bill Ankers, was a devout Christian. And he had special permission from his pastor to take with him communion up into space, so that he could celebrate communion every day that he was away from earth, which gave him the vast comfort of a God who was alongside of him. And he felt that the journey out into space was very much God ordained, that God was leading human beings out into his majesty, and there they would experience, just as they experienced on earth, the love and the glory of their Creator. Back in 1969, a film was released that really was one of the most influential movies of all time in terms of science fiction, and that was Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. It's a magnificent film, and if you see it in the cinema, I mean, the spacecrafts and the spaceships are just out of this world. But I've never really truly loved that film. It's never been one of my favourite films because I find it cold, almost antiseptic. And Stanley Kubrick, of course, was quite a cold filmmaker. He wasn't known for putting lots of emotion into his movies. And I find 2001 almost a sterile experience. I can wonder at it and marvel at its majesty, but I don't feel a personal connection to it. The story of 2001 is quite hard to unravel, but at its base, it's about what is creation? How did creation come on earth? And of course, it has the famous scene at the beginning with the caveman discovering an obelisk, and then that obelisk influencing all human development afterwards. It's a very cold film, and for me, it's a very distant movie, something I find really hard to really love. Because I, as a Christian, believe that we do have a loving God at the centre of the universe. It's not a sterile, emotionless universe. It's a universe made by a loving Creator. And in its vastness and its majesty, we can see the hand of God. Our Bible reading today is the famous reading that's so often used on Christmas Eve, the Word reading. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Again, it's all very mysterious, as 2001 is, when it speaks of a time beyond time, almost before time actually began, when there was the Word. And in the Word there was the light and the mystery of God. And through that light and mystery of the Word, creation came into being. And that creation was a sign of a loving Creator who loves his world. It's quite interesting that of the many astronauts who went out into space, many of them were Christian and found their faith reinforced by their experience. Mike Hopkins was one of the space shuttle astronauts and the space station. And he again took communion out with him. He had it specially consecrated, and he took enough communion that again he could have communion every day that he was away from Earth on the space station. And again he found in the vastness of space the hand of God touching his heart. So often for us, in our own discipleships, faith sometimes can be hard to hold on to, especially when we don't understand what is happening around us and why particular things happen. We can literally find faith really hard to hang on to. But if we can see God in the creation all around us, if we can see his hand of love supporting and strengthening us through that creation, if we can experience the full grandeur and mystery of God that lies sometimes beyond our own human limitations, then we will know his love and his peace, and we will see his glory that will touch our hearts and sustain and strengthen us. Buzz Aldrin wrote this about his experiences in Earth. He said this: God reveals himself in space as man reaches out to the universe. There are many of us in the NASA program who do trust that what we are doing is part of God's eternal plan for us. I'll read that again. There are many of us in the NASA program who do trust that what we are doing is part of God's eternal plan for us. Can we trust our loving Saviour and our loving God? Can we see his majesty in the world around us? Can we see his hand of love in the countless acts of goodness and love that happen in our world? Because if we can, we will know God as our loving Creator. We will know God as our loving Father. And we will know Jesus as our Saviour, who came to earth to bring light and hope to human beings. God bless you.